before, I also feel like I could be sitting out there with you because certainly I'm in a similar stage. Some of you saw my just recently turned 5-year-old. Today is normally our day, Mama and Maddie Day, and so this was a little challenge to even get her into childcare. So I know at times we're all in the same boat, all to say. I'm going to be talking about entitlement and how we counteract entitlement in a culture that says we're always deserving. And I thought I would just start with a fun clip to show you guys. We're just going to watch 2 minutes of it. Some of you might have seen the spoof that was done around Halloween time and giving kids ridiculous candy that they did not like.
I issued a challenge. I asked the parents of America to pull a little holiday trick on their children. We did this on Halloween with candy and got a lot of response to it. So we did it again, this time for Christmas. I asked parents to tell their kids they were going to let them open one present a few weeks early. But instead of a good present, I said, put something the kids won't like in the box and then upload a video of that to YouTube labeled, "Hey Jimmy Kimmel, I gave my kids a terrible present." And a lot of people did do this, and they did give their kids terrible presents, and a lot of the kids, surprisingly, reacted poorly to that.
What is it?
An old banana.
What are you doing?
Isn't it?
Oh, okay.
A battery and an onion. What's wrong?
I don't want an onion.
Did you smell your onion? Here, smell it.
Open up a hot dog. I got a girl activity book with singers. I'm not a girl. I'm like a burrito. The worst present ever.
Marissa, what do you tell me all the time about my cooking? You love my cooking, so I made you something.
You should appreciate. I appreciate it. You're getting us a present, but you didn't know it'd be like that. A sandwich of mine. I love your cooking when you cook like dinners. Hot pockets or.
So you don't want that peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
I'll eat it.
All right, well, that gives us a little bit, you got to appreciate, and just fun humor as we think about a culture that we're kind of living in today, that often we see this, I want what I want, when I want it, now, right? This idea of entitlements. Let me first just briefly define it. It's the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. And we're seeing kids today more and more thinking they are automatically deserving, and they come to downright expect certain things just to come their way automatically. So I want what I want it, and I want it now. It's the I don't want to work for it. That's the second kind of piece of entitlement. And I want it because everyone else has it, Mom, don't you know? And I expect that you're going to get it for me, or do it for me, or fix it for me, right? Fix all of my problems. Fun stuff, right, that we see in sometimes kids today. So in the literature, what do we actually know? So if you're going to look at the field of developmental psychology and look in the literature, researchers speak to overindulgence and saying we have just seen this shift of overindulgence, and particularly one study defined it that I appreciated as too much stuff, too much help, and too much of no rules and no chores. And what used to be talked about in the literature as what was called the spoiled child syndrome has actually been retermed by some developmentalists, saying it's entitled child syndrome that we see today. And all of this leads to excessive self-centeredness, certainly reduced self-reliance. When there's too much help, our kids just are not able to be self-reliant. So reduced self-reliance, immature behavior, temper and outbursts, None of these are character traits that we want to instill in our kids. So how did we get here? I want to briefly look at that. I want to look at why is it that we're seeing in the literature something called even the entitled child syndrome, and what are some cultural shifts, maybe some current cultural kind of occurrences that are going on today. So the first that I would say is this notion of social media. And there's a lot about social media and narcissism, and particularly in teenagers and college students. But some researchers are now beginning to look at, well, what about in children and social media? It's the idea that the growth of social media, and kids today, literally technology's at their fingertips. It's an extension of their body is how we think of it. And it's truly altered reality, and it's enhanced this sense of self-promotion. It offers a fake sense of who we are and who we present online. And this statistic I find fascinating, that 92% of children, by the time they are 2, have an active online presence. Yeah, well, it's from their parents, because more than 1,000 pictures have been posted of them by the time they reach their 5th birthday. So that makes sense now, right? Because obviously these kids aren't on Facebook and they're not on Instagram and Twitter. But once again, 92% would say, and we would look at and say, they have an active online presence. They're not doing it, but they're, and so it's literally been called as sharenting. Instead of parenting, sharenting, and it's given parenting a whole new dimension. It's viewer-rated performance, right? We're posting all of these. So the fact that more than 1,000 or approximately 1,000 images of a child is posted online before they turn 5, right? So certainly we see social media not just affecting teenagers and junior hires, but also children. So then I would ask, well, is it any wonder that kids then think they're all that, right? They've already got a social media, an active presence online. There's been a recent study in 2013 found that social media truly does reflect growing levels of narcissism in our culture today. And the study showed, and it was actually done with high school and college students, and it showed that they used social media to truly boost their egos, and they actually scored higher when we gave them personality inventories on narcissism. So that's one thing that we see that's going on culturally. What about the self-esteem movement? And the self-esteem movement actually started in the 1980s. And does anybody know, I found this so fascinating. I didn't realize how exactly it began. It actually was in California by a state assemblyman, but that's a little hint. Anyone know the story behind that? So it was a state assemblyman here in California. His name was John Vasconcellos, and he believed that low self-esteem was the cause of crime and teenage pregnancy and drug abuse and underachievement. And so then he said, if we could boost young people's self-esteem, that will be what he called a social vaccine. And he argued it would actually dramatically reduce the problems that were plaguing society. He even said it would help balance the budget, since actually those people with high self-esteem make more money. So this was in the 1980s, began in California, but the outcome of it is this notion of we are raising kids with the mantra of you are special. And of course, here's the thing, our kids are special. We are all children of God. We are so special. But the notion of you are special and you are the best isn't healthy for kids. It was a uniquely American phenomenon, and we began to value personhood rather than hard work or rather than effort. And it's led to what I call everyone gets a trophy. That's the title of the talk, trophy time, right? It's this notion of everyone. I mean, we didn't all get trophies when I played soccer or did ballet or whatever it is. Every single person, just because, gets a trophy in whatever we do. This is pink bubble gum or pink lightning. I can't remember what team, on my daughter's team. And here they are. And you'll probably even recognize Evie Rohde there was, right? Evie and my daughter Kate's in the center holding her trophy. You can even see personalities, right, of kind of coming out as they're holding their trophy high. So are we surprised then that all of our kids, and actually this translates to when they're in high school as well as college students, think they're better than average? There is literally a principle in social psychology that's called the better than average effect. And when both children and adolescents rate themselves, they feel that they compare much more positively in all areas than all of their cohort and their peers, right? Because we all deserve a trophy. We're better than average. The self-esteem movement has undoubtedly played a part as a cultural current for entitlement. And then what about the parental end of things? So on the parental end of things, we actually see parents today think that they're doing a worse job parenting. They actually feel that they're failing, which I find saddening because I think parents today are doing more and involved more and volunteering more and more intentional in some ways than parents years ago. But yet somehow parents feel like they're doing a worse job. Now, if you were to ask, a survey was done with a good amount of child psychologists, and they were asked one question: what do you think one of the biggest problems is with kids today? And the psychologists actually responded. They asked, what do you think the biggest problem with kids is? And they responded, parental permissiveness. It's this idea that we are kind of befriending our kids. We're not really believing in obedience as much. We're not taking an authority position, so that we're much more permissive, which we do see is indeed a problem today. Research from the Johnson Foundation found that parental permissiveness is a more important risk factor in the teenage years than peer pressure. And actually, when parents are permissive, it's 50% more likely those kids are going to be involved with substance abuse and sexually active. So parental permissiveness we certainly see as a risk factor. And let's be honest, none of us want to raise kids that have an attitude of, I'm better than average, I just deserve it, and you need to do it for me. And kids who are psychologically turning to other, whether that's substances or sexual activity, we don't want to raise kids that in a couple years are turning to that to kind of fill themselves and feel better. So what do we do? And this gets into the meat of what we're going to be talking about. So how do we counteract entitlement? So I want to speak about 6 things. We're going to talk about parenting effectively, and particularly a particular parenting style that has been shown to have the most positive child outcomes in the US. Setting limits and cultivating gratitude. We're going to talk about building life skills and doing that now, letting them fail, and then instilling a growth mindset. So let's start with parenting effectively, and let me show a very quick clip to get us thinking about Diana Bamrin's classic study that we're going to talk about here in a second. Let's see if this will open for me. Okay. Oops, where is that all the way? Okay. Oh, no. Here it is. All right. I don't know if this will come full screen, but we'll try.
Boys in the checkout lane, it just keeps her from having a tantrum.
Let's see.
He only eats food that's the color beige.
I'm going to rewind it and just
I buy those little toys in the checkout lane, it just keeps her from having a tantrum.
He only eats food that's the color beige, so that's what I give him, chicken nuggets, every single night.
She's forgotten her homework, and I stop what I'm doing and I drive it to school again.
I just broke down and bought him the iPhone. I know he doesn't need it, but all his friends have one.
I know the party was a bit much, but she's only turning 5 once, right? But for her 6th birthday party, she wants it on an actual spaceship.
And somebody just say, that's me. All those Pinterest parents out there, right? A classic study was done in 1967 by Diana Bamrin, who looked at parenting styles. She's at UC Berkeley, still holds water today. There's been many studies done since that. And Bamrin looked at particularly 4 different categories. She looked at expressions of warmth, so from affectionate to cold and critical on the other end. She looked at strategies for discipline, right? And are you kind of criticizing? Are you persuading? Are you actually explaining to children what's going on? She looked at communication from parent to child and child to parent. And she looked at expectations for maturity. So what are the expectations that parents have? How responsible do they expect their children to be? And she found initially, and there's just 3 listed here, and that's the ones that we'll talk about, but she initially initially just found 3 parenting styles that became apparent, and about 10 years later found a 4th one, which is uninvolved, that we'll briefly talk about. But I want to go through these 3 really briefly, and particularly talk about the child outcome that has been done on longitudinal studies, so following kids from when they were born until they were 20 years old, right? That there's been a good amount of studies that have looked at that. So the first was authoritarian, and authoritarian was just a my way or the highway. You do what I say, you do it now, no questions asked. An authoritarian parent, so it was very, as you can tell, low warmth. It was strict and sometimes physical discipline, high expectations of maturity. For communication, parent to child, they're always the ones who are giving directives. So it was high parent to child communication, but in a very stern, strict way, because I expect obedience and I expect it now. But from child to parent, it was low communication. The child outcome that Bamrand and other researchers found is that actually girls were much more dependent. So fast forward to now junior high and high school. Girls were more dependent. Boys were more hostile and angry. Both showed low self-control, and both were less sociable. Second parenting style, we'll go according to this. Permissive is what she found was another. And permissive, these are parents who just are very lax. They're kind of inconsistent. They're a little bit more buddy-buddy, the friendship model with their child. So there was high warmth. They were definitely warm. They really didn't discipline. They would kind of just turn away and just pretend like they didn't see what was going on there. They had low expectations for responsibility, for maturity. There was low communication from parent to child, but high communication from child to parent. So this would almost be a little bit more of the friendship model of parenting when you think of just, oh, I want to be the cool mom, the cool dad, the cool parent. So the outcome for children for permissive parenting was actually similar to authoritarian. They actually showed little self-control. They were more likely to act out with peers. They suffered from inadequate emotional regulation, so didn't always know how to regulate themselves. And they were more immature, and they actually continued to live at home after college. They returned back home, so became a little bit more dependent, right? None of us probably want that. And then the last was authoritative. And authoritative, and probably I'm not going to spoil much by saying this was undoubtedly the most positive that Bamrand and others since have found, once again, in the United States. Because I'll make a little caveat here about these parenting styles. But authoritative, these were parents who were firm, but they were also loving. They provided structure. They had high expectations for maturity. They kind of had high demand and high discipline, but they were very communicative. They were warm. It was that combination of love and warmth with firmness and structure. And so the child outcome for this was these kids were then, you fast forward, looking at them at junior high and then high school, they were more independent, friendly, more self-assured. They were more cooperative with peers and adults, and they were more assertive. They tended to even score higher on the happiness index. So undoubtedly, and like I said, this holds weight today, 40 plus years later. Many studies have been done on parenting styles. Now the caveat here would be, and I often, when I teach on this at Westmont with my students, I say, but I want to just, and we won't go into the discussion here, but I want to just name that authoritarian actually can be seen as incredibly positive, especially in low SES neighborhoods. It's been what's been deemed the no-nonsense parenting style, because a lot of folks in the African American community actually felt like, wait a second, we're getting a bad rap. This is how we parent. Well, here's the thing. They needed strict obedience right away. You do what I say when I say it, because you know what? You're actually potentially in danger. I tell the story of how in all my years at Wheaton, I tutored in the south side of Chicago at projects. And here we would come up on a school bus, and a bunch of white middle class kind of, college students from the suburbs would be escorted by police into these projects. And we could hear gunshots, which is why we were escorted each Wednesday evening and Saturday morning by the police. This was the kids' reality. Parents had to be authoritarian because truly it was life or death. So it was, you do what I say, you do it now, and you do not ask questions. So there's caveats in the literature depending upon socioeconomic status and the neighborhood that we live in. So we want to be mindful of that. But for the most part, in regards to what effective parenting looks like, it truly is this combination of love and warmth with firmness and structure. There's a real difference between nurturing and overindulgence. And I think unfortunately today we are kind of more worried about kind of, well, we've got to give it to them because everybody else has it, and I don't want my kid to be left behind, and we tend to be more overindulgent. You can be nurturing and still firm and have high demands and high support. It's the idea of high demands and high support, and that's effective parenting. So we want to be mindful of that. The second thing of counteracting entitlements or counteracting entitlement in children is undoubtedly related to effective parenting, which is setting limits. Essentially saying no to our children, and saying no from an early age. As I said in the beginning, we live in a world with a lot of stuff. More and more stuff today than perhaps arguably 30, 40 years ago. If you go into any child's bedroom or playroom, you'll see that. And as parents, we need to set limits and make sure our kids don't get too much stuff or inappropriate things. And here's the thing, when your kid hears you say no and stick to it and you hold your ground, it's actually they're learning the world isn't just going to give you what you want because you say you want it. And they're also learning that their desires and their wants, yeah, they're a good thing, but you don't automatically get them. You have to actually work for them. You have to sometimes work hard. You have to earn it. And this is actually teaching them the value of hard work, of discipline, and of motivation. And it doesn't reinforce entitlement. It's the whole idea that, hey, we need to teach our kids that, mommy and daddy work hard. We're all a team here. We're working around the house together. We're working outside of the house so we can live in this space or go on vacation. So if you want something, you need to sometimes earn it or work for it. As they get older, we see that preteens and the teen years, limits might be fewer, but they're undoubtedly just as important. Preteens and teens need a lot of opportunities to be responsible, and yet they also need enforced limits. And so I often say setting limits, even when you're met with attitude, whether that's an attitude of a 2-year-old or an attitude of a 12-year-old, right? So whether you're met with grandiosity or, come on, Mom, I should be able to get this, or egocentrism, or a lot of times condescending. It's weird, I've noticed in my not even 7-year-old yet, that sometimes the attitude that she comes back with of, no, I should get that, puts her hand on her hip and sticks this out. I'm thinking, where are you getting this from? And I will still continue to hold my ground and say no. It shows them that they're also not entitled to treat people with demands and kind of I should, and this egocentric attitude. And it helps them understand that, okay, maybe I can't control this, and then I need to let go of it. And now we want to teach kids, it helps them emotionally regulate. Because initially, when you say no, they're not happy. They're going to be on the ground. When we're emotionally dysregulated is when we can't really get control of our emotions. The most classic example would be the 2-year-old tantrum that's on the ground with hands and feet pounding. And I always say it's okay that they do that because it develops their central nervous system. But if you have a 5-year-old, which is true, by the way, but a 5-year-old doing that, we think, they need to emotionally regulate and learn that. And you saying no and sticking to it actually helps them emotionally regulate. And perhaps more importantly, it instills confidence because guess what? They realize, I can actually survive even with deprivation, if that's how they see it. I can survive without getting all of my needs met. I'm okay. I can still go on and even have a good afternoon, even though Mom said no to this. And then they can start learning to meet some of their own needs. And limits set with empathetic statements, it shows your kids that you're listening, that you hear them, and that you care. It can even show them that you're on their side, but that you're still going to say no. And so let's now just think of, fast forward and say, does anybody have junior hires or high schoolers in here? Yeah, Lori does, that's right. Renee's kind of raising her hand. Well, we certainly know that so even limits at whatever age set with empathetic statements. So I know you want to go to that party, and it stinks that you can't go. I get it. It seems unfair. I'm not changing my mind. I'm not changing my mind, but do you see how I could say that? Or, all of your friends are going to be there, and you wish that you could go. And you're going to feel like on Monday morning, you're not going to be able to fit in because you can't talk about what happened. That's hard. But still not letting them go, right? I mean, so limits set with empathetic statements. It actually instills confidence. It lets them know I can survive. It still lets them know that you care. You've listened. You can even say, I sometimes even say to my kids, I don't like it when I don't get what I want either. I get frustrated. I get angry. We all know what it's like to not get what we want. So join with that emotion. That stinks. You're not getting what you want. I hate it when I don't get what I want. Right? I mean, so you can be able to say things like that. Love within limits, even though it's a temporary blow to their entitlement. And yes, they're going to dislike you momentarily or maybe for an hour or two, right? But eventually they're going to learn, oh, wait a second, I can survive without getting all of my needs met. This external boundary will become more internal for them as they learn how to structure and say no themselves. If we're constantly saying yes, then kids truly are going to think, well, I deserve it and I want it now and I can get whatever I want. And usually mom or dad help me do that. So setting limits is incredibly important.
Andrea, I have a question.
Yes.
I kind of took it almost to an extreme this weekend and actually said, and you know what, there's going to be times that you will really not like us, like right now. And that's so normal because I didn't like my parents either. I mean, even joining them in that emotion
Yes.
as they get older.
Totally, definitely. Oh, I think that's a brilliant thing to say because here's the thing, it's true, and you can notice it. So I would say you know, and I can tell that you're mad at us right now. You're not even looking at me, Jordan. Like your arms are crossed, and you use the behavior of your adolescent, and like name it for them, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, they get it, and they do care. And that's what you want, is for them to know that, no, you can, even though I'm still giving you structure and I'm still having to say no, I care, and I think, yeah, it's going to be a bummer that, you know, X, Y, or Z, you can't do this. It's going to be a bummer that on Monday, I just had a 14-year-old who felt like all of her friends were at partying this past weekend, 14, and the things that they're doing at 14 scare me as a mother of 2 daughters. And literally she said, yeah, none of them would talk with me on Monday morning because I don't think I was there at any of these parties. They wouldn't sit with me for lunch. And so I said to her mom later, I said, you've got to be able to, instead of saying, well, it's better for you that you didn't go because, you know, there was so much drugs at that party and we knew what was happening. But actually, I mean, yeah, you can get there, and that might be what you're thinking. You can share that with your spouse, but what you need to say is, that is so hard. I'm so sorry you had nobody to sit with at lunch, and your friends just decided to leave you out because you weren't at the party on Saturday night, right? So in that way, you really do want to join and let them know, I get it. Because once again, here's the thing, we do get it. Yeah.
I was thinking about when I was raised, my father did not want me to work. He did not want me to have a job. He felt it would be embarrassing to him that his daughter had to work. And I had to sneak to get a job. And again, when I went to college, he told me not to, and I did. Because I wanted to be more independent. Now, I married a man who really encouraged our kids to earn money and be independent to some extent. And honestly, if you think ahead how expensive college is, it's really important for kids to know what the finances are at an early age as you go along and not pretend like there's a money tree in the backyard.
Well, and I love it, Ruth, because we're going to talk about building life skills. And one of the things that I'll speak to is just that this idea of kids should start learning some of those skills earlier on than we're teaching them today. Isn't it ironic? There's the cultural shifts and the trends of, you know, you had to sneak getting a job. Boy, I think a lot of the parents that I work with in my private practice are like, would you please go and contribute in some way? We'll pay you, mow the lawn, right? Raise your hand up, Christy.
I just commentary. I love the joining piece. I think, I don't know if it's my delivery or not, but one of my kids' responses, she feels like I'm patronizing her when I say that. So I'm just curious if you have, do you know what, like?
Yeah. Maybe it's your delivery. I'm teasing Christy.
See, you're really upset. And she's like, Mom, like she just sees right through it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's more that they just want to be angry, and I'm a person to be angry at, and so let them be angry.
Well, and maybe,
sensitivity of when the time.
Yes, I was going to say, it is, and maybe just be like, I get it, you're mad at me, you're mad, and you can be mad at me. So like if she's super mad, you know, then just, I sometimes also say match there, if they're stomping and like, you really don't like you or whatever, you're mad, I get it, let's take some space. So like, you know, match what they're, you don't want to start screaming yourself, but you can match where they're at as opposed to, okay, and when you, if you start breathing deeply and calmly and say, you're so upset right now, sweetie, I mean, I'd probably slap you too, of like, don't be condescending.
I feel like maybe part of it is you want kids, they want to be understood, but also you have to, I don't know, I think it's the right, sometimes they just want to be pissed at
Yes. Totally. And you can, that's right, and kind of recognize that and be like, fair enough, I don't get it, you're mad. Let's take some space and talk about it soon.
Where are we at here?
yeah. Which sometimes it's hard. And the beauty is, Christy, I mean, your kids will tell you when they're like, no, Mom, that's not it. I'm not even upset, I'm just angry. So they tell you, and then you can be like, okay, let's talk later. Got it, you're angry. You know, you can just even have that as a response, because that's the beauty of joining. If you do it, either if you name that it's upset and they're thinking, no, it's anger, or if you name that you're sad, you know, it sounds like you're really frustrated. It's like, actually, no, I'm sad. I feel so disappointed and discouraged. They will correct you if you're wrong, and you'll know if it's not the time to then talk about it. So yeah, the timing of it is huge. And then also, and I do sometimes think you got to meet, I mean, when I have a client who comes in and is struggling with depression, or an adolescent who comes in and is super angry, you know, if someone's struggling with depression, I'm like, how are you doing today? It's so great to see you. I'm so glad you're here. I've been looking forward to, you know, our meeting. They'd be like, seriously? They're looking down, they're barely talking, so I have to, you know, how are things? Like, it looks like maybe it's not as, I mean, I have to almost match my voice to it. So when someone's up here, and a kid, and you try to, well, and say super calm in this awesome calm voice, it seems like you're pretty upset. Yeah, they're right on and saying like, come on, Mom, like, give me a break, you know. So you gotta love it. The kids are so honest, and they do let you know and correct you, which is a great thing. I love the questions throughout, so we can certainly keep them going. Third point, how do we counteract entitlement? And this is perhaps, and I know I spoke on this last semester in the fall, so I won't go too much into this now, but truly, cultivating gratitude in children is one of the best ways to counteract entitlement. And we see it in the literature. When children are grateful, studies show they become sensitive to the feelings of others. They develop innate capacities for empathy and altruism. Whereas entitled kids perpetually feel disappointed. Entitled kids perpetually feel like, I deserve that, I can't believe it, I didn't get that, I wasn't called up for this in class or in school. But when they're grateful, they're more appreciative, obviously, and thankful. They have more empathy, there's more altruism. One study actually linked gratitude in children to greater social support and greater protection from stress. Another study analyzed descriptors of children's strengths, and it found that gratitude had the greatest link to future life satisfaction. So children who were grateful and who were able to name things they were grateful for, look at them 15, 20 years later, and they had the highest levels of life satisfaction. So how do we cultivate gratitude in kids? And this, once again, will be brief because I know some of you were here in the fall when I spoke about it. Model it yourself. This is something that needs to probably be caught as well as taught. But you know, some things are better caught when they just see you. They see you saying thank you to the clerk at Trader Joe's, or to the gardener, or to, you know, somebody who comes and delivers a package for you. So model it. To your spouse, they should see you saying thank you. To them, hey, even simple, thanks for coming when I called you. Thanks for coming when I said it was time to come in for dinner, right? So, I mean, you don't want to go over the top with it, but there's ways to just thank them for doing, catch them when they're good and thank them. Let them see you modeling that, because kids are always watching you, and they're watching how you interact, not only in the home and outside of the home. Share the gift of giving is another way to cultivate gratitude. And I think experienced parents have realized that the more kids get, the less they appreciate what they have. Truly, the more they get, the less they appreciate what they have. And it goes back to, there's just too much stuff today. And when they get so much more, they just begin to appreciate what they have so much less. So receiving gifts can be fun, but how great if we can actually teach kids of how fun it is to give gifts to others. To give gifts to, for us, we have a house cleaner that comes once a month that we adore, and her daughter got pregnant quite early in high school, and so we give all of our toys to Olivia's grandbaby, and we've seen pictures of Emma, and so it's a great way to say, hey, let's get rid of some things and give them to somebody who doesn't have as much because her mommy's still in high school, and so what that looks like, right? So share the gift of giving with kids. Help them be a part of it. Serve others. Service is a great way to cultivate gratitude in children, and it can be a part of a child's life from such a young age. Get kids involved in, the soup kitchen and transition house and places that you might volunteer or spend your time. Go to a nursing home. When they're older, do animal shelters. Usually kids love that. So service is a way to help. And then talk about, hey, we are so blessed and we are so fortunate to have a home that we live in and to have food on the table. Help them be mindful of that. You know, sometimes you don't have to travel to India or Africa to see poverty. We can just go and serve others and see, yeah, some people, I know we talk about it because there's kids in my daughter's first grade classroom at Roosevelt who are living at Transition House. And I happen to know that for reasons, but I don't tell her that. But I say, you know what, we need to kind of be able to share more. And we need to be so thankful because not all of your friends actually have maybe two parents that are at home, or maybe they don't have a job and they don't know where they're sleeping tonight. And help them kind of be mindful. Mindfulness is a great way to teach kids gratitude. Lori, I saw your hand up.
Right now, and also I work for Compassion, but a lot of you sponsor a child, and that's another way.
Yes.
Way that your kids can get involved with a child that actually lives in a different area. And we have a couple kids, so just pray for them at night. Just that awareness. Oh, I actually, there's a bigger world than Santa Barbara.
Yes. Which is huge, and so it's a great way. Yeah, compassion or world relief. There's all sorts of ways.
I was going to give a plug to Erin too, doing the glow, helping making the food or bringing your kids. It's such a perfect opportunity that she comes orchestrate once a month.
I don't know what glow is, but I'll have to talk to Erin after.
It's a meal share for people experiencing homelessness or Alameda.
Okay. Oh, neat.
My kids got it.
Yeah. Yes, no, I know that West, yeah, that's so great. I just don't think I knew that name. Yeah, and such a great way to get, I think sometimes, and I even know when my kids were little, I thought, oh, I'm not sure if I want to take them to Alameda Park and me be engaging with other folks and them running around. That got me a little bit nervous about, but there's appropriate ages to do that with kids. They don't need to be 2 years old and kids that are maybe active and going to run away, but once they're even a little bit older, of exposing them to some of those things in our own backyard. And then certainly there's specific things, and once again, I know that we spoke about this in the fall, but just there's great ways to just explicitly teach and practice gratitude. Things like at the dinner table, hey, I want to hear 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for that happened today, 2 or 3 specific things. Pillow talk is a great way to just reflect back on what we're grateful for, and just getting children in that habit of cultivating a grateful and a thankful spirit. I thankfully don't have to remind at least my first grader anymore, but I have her, I definitely in kindergarten, I would just kind of mouth, turn to your teachers and say thank you right before you leave. To the student teacher, to the main teacher, thank you, Mrs. Hill, thank you, Mrs. Gallardo. Like, look at them. And now she just does it automatically. And I actually, I noticed I have about 70 students between my 2 classes, and there's only a handful, probably about 5 to 7 that thank me at the end of each lecture, but consistently they turn, thank you, Dr. Gurney. And I think, I hope that's my kids someday, because we're starting young, and I'm making sure that in preschool and kindergarten, they're turning and thanking their teacher. Just those specific ways. And of course, we need to be doing that as well. They need to see us doing that. All to say, we know that gratitude counteracts entitlement. It's one of the biggest things that we see in the literature. Okay, a couple more points here. Building life skills, and building life skills now. Kids today need to start learning how to do things on their own. It goes back to the initial, I don't want to work for it. Why would I have to work for it, right? I expect you to do it for me, give it to me, fix it for me. There was actually a 2007 study in the Journal of Family Psychology, and researchers asked 18 to 25-year-olds what criteria they thought was the most indicative of adulthood. And so their response, these are 18 to 25-year-olds in order of importance, was first, accepting responsibility for the consequences of their action. Second, establishing a relationship with your parents as equal adults. And third, be financially independent from your parents. And the fourth was deciding on your own values independent of your parents. The researchers then asked those same young adults, do you feel like you're working your way towards these 4 things? Only 16% said yes, right? So an overwhelming 84% said, yeah, no, we're not there yet. Mothers and fathers of those kids were then asked the same questions, and they overwhelmingly agreed. 85% said, oh yeah, no, they're not there yet at all. Childhood is a training ground for adulthood. Has anybody heard of one of my books that I've been recommending to all of my friends, all of my clients, How to Raise an Adult? A couple of you guys have read it or know of it. Yes, John, oh, that's right. Well, you're married to Erin, so So Julie Lithcock-Hames, How to Raise an Adult. She was dean at Stanford for the past 10 years, lives in Palo Alto, has 2 kids, Avery and Sawyer. You'll read about them in the book. But I love, and I'm going to pull her checklist for this notion of, hey, and one of the questions for discussion you'll see on the screen is, what's your checklist? What are the things that you are doing now so that you're going to raise an adult that when they're 20, they're not going to still be a child, right? It's an 18-year-old client of mine just recently said, my mom's just always done it for me, so I just assumed that I was actually incompetent, which was a fascinating way that she internalized it. Because in the meantime, her parents are saying, we believe in you. You can do it. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And yet, her parents, particularly her mom, would always rush in and do it for her. Talk about a mixed message. So her internalization of that was, clearly I don't do it as well as my mom does. Clearly I'm a little bit incompetent because she's always kind of taken over and done it for me. We need to, as parents of young kids, set the stage for what is going to happen when they grow up. And once again, and to Julie's point, this is their training ground. When we don't let kids figure it out for themselves, it's parenting failure, I think. I would call that parenting. When we rush in and whether it's we're parenting out of fear, whether it's because we're controlling ourselves and wanting it to be just that way and done in this exact order, or maybe whether we tend to be more perfectionistic, we have to kind of work through our own issues so that we can actually start preparing them and help them acquire life skills. So as I said, you'll see in the discussion questions that I'm gonna ask you guys to write down 6 to 10 things that you want your kids to be able to do when they leave their house. Because to Julie's point, on the eve of them going off to college, assuming that's where most of our kids will go, they don't magically acquire life skills. They don't all of a sudden be like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to read you real quickly what her checklist was. And if you haven't read the book, I would totally encourage you. So she had 8 items, and I'll go through it kind of quick. And this will prime the pump for you all if you choose to answer that question, if we have time for it. An 18-year-old, she said, must be able to talk to strangers, professors, landlords, healthcare providers, human resources managers. She said the problem is, the crutch today is we teach kids, no, don't talk to strangers. Strangers are so dangerous. Right? We're so much more aware of this notion of stranger danger, which actually, if you look statistically, the world is more safe in regards to stranger danger. Kids are more likely to be abducted or hurt by somebody that knows them, by a family member. But because of the internet, when something does happen, it is so broadcast everywhere that we then have been parenting in fear. We don't let our kids talk to any strangers. Kids need to learn and be able to discern, hey, how can I approach a stranger respectfully? How can I understand that nuance of this stranger seems like they're actually going to be helpful? Because most strangers are going to be helpful. An 18-year-old must be able to find his or her way around campus or a town they live in or where they're doing a summer internship. The crutch, she would say, is we drive our kids everywhere. We accompany them everywhere. We don't really let them even walk down the street by themselves today, right? So thinking about how do we even instill kids like directional sense and visual spatial, how to fill the car with gas, how to get from point A to point B. Can they ride their bike more? Could they actually walk, right, would be her suggestions. An 18-year-old should be able to manage their assignments, their workloads, and their deadlines. The crutch here is, how many of you, I've stopped doing it, but hey, your Friday folder and homework is due today. Is it packed in your backpack? No, that's reasonable to do for a kindergartner and first grader when they're just getting used to it. But fast forward a little bit more, kids need to be able to manage, oh, I know when this is due, when I bring my library book in, and if they don't have it, they don't get to get a new library book, right? Have them have natural consequences. Don't run to the school to give them their library book. So they need to learn, and the crutch is we are so often doing things for them. An 18-year-old must be able to contribute to the running of a home. The crutch is that sometimes we don't even allow them to contribute to running of the home because 1, we want it done a certain way, or 2, they're so overscheduled. They're involved in so many other activities. Or fast forward to high school, when I had no clue that freshmen, until I was with a freshman yesterday, or 2 days ago in my clinical office, I said, what, you're taking AP classes? Freshmen are taking AP classes, so we're stressing our kids out so much academically. They're all saying, okay, well, just do your homework, that's fine. Don't worry about cleaning up your room. Don't worry about taking the trash out. No. Let's schedule less. Let's recognize that there's a balance, and let's actually help them because they need to be able to manage their own workload, but contribute to, at some point, being a roommate, some point perhaps being a spouse themselves. 3 more things she said. An 18-year-old should be able to handle interpersonal problems. And I would blame the invention of the play date for the fact that we don't let kids solve their own problems anymore. Now, what's fascinating is that when we think of the invention of the play date, why did that even come about? Because when I was young, we just went out and played. Right? Lived in a dead-end street in New York, just went out and played. And then our parents, I can hear the cat call. The parents, one, Mrs. Howie had 6 kids, so she had a long list to go through. And my mom said, Jennifer and Andrea, like it was this nice sing-song, kids would come in. Today, well, the play date came about in the 90s when more women entered the workforce. And all of a sudden, for the first time, there was an influx of more women that were balancing being parents, being moms, and working. And to work in their schedules, they had to start arranging play dates. Otherwise, their kids weren't going to get to play. So certainly, as a working mom, I appreciate that. But what's the problem? Now we've got parents involved in play, and parents going to break up little, arguments that are happening. And if people aren't sharing correctly, let them figure it out themselves at a certain age. Now, obviously, when they're super young, my husband and I had a different approach when our kids were 3 and 5. I'm like, listen, my 3-year-old doesn't know how to do it. We got to model for them. Okay, let's talk through this. So if you've got little ones, you've got to be modeling how this works. Hey, it sounds like you're not feeling safe, that she just took that, and that kind of hurt your feelings, and we talk it through. But fast forward, they need to start being able to do that when they're in elementary school, right? We need to kind of step back so that they can manage their own interpersonal problems. An 18-year-old should be able to cope with ups and downs of life. And, Julie would say the crutch is when things get hard, we rescue. For the most part, as parents today, when things get hard and we see our kids stressed out, we tend to rescue. And they must be able to take risks. And she would say also the crutch is we've laid the path down so straight and narrow that they often don't feel like they can veer too much from it. But I would sum that up by saying when we over-direct and when we overprotect and when we handhold, we're actually doing kids a disservice because they don't have the skills when they head off to college. And let me tell you, as a college professor, I have gotten several anonymous, always anonymous, phone calls from, I'm sure, very loving and well-intentioned parents who do not tell me if it's a son or daughter, but continues to say on my voicemail, my child loves you. They think you're great, totally appreciate your class. They don't even say what class because they're probably worried, how big is this class? But it's really stressful that you don't provide study guides. Could you please start thinking about giving study guides before your exam? Yeah. I mean, we're kind of raising our eyes, but and that's not just one. I've gotten my girlfriend, who's a biology professor at Westmont, just had a student, a young man, come in and kind of shyly say, can we conference call my mom into this? He's on academic probation. He's about to lose his scholarship. He's gotten lots of opportunity. Talked to my girlfriend afterwards, and she said it was 30 minutes, and she handled it beautifully, but she said it was wild. I literally, at that point, was having a conversation with the speakerphone as the son was sitting here, and the mom was clearly upset because, and then she even said to my girlfriend at one point, can I please be notified when his assignments are due, when the exams are? And she actually said, this isn't high school. Your son is not a minor. And I love the way she tends to be a very direct, forthright. I was like, good for you. She said, I was very polite and I said it, but she said politely, your son can choose to do that, but I'm not going to do that for you, or for him, and on your behalf. But we are seeing this more and more. I'm telling you, if you've read this book, these are things I see at West, and this isn't just, it's not just Westmont, it's not just Stanford, it's everywhere. And some of the stories that Julie has of her colleagues all across the US, you would be shocked. One more that I'll tell you that's not mine, but she said one of the freshman students at Stanford, she kept noticing these UPS boxes on the sidewalk, and they were sitting out there, and they were quite large, and finally she found out who they were addressed to and found that student, and he said, well, I can't carry them in by myself, and I don't know who to ask or what to do. Didn't know how to go up to a stranger, a roommate, somebody else, say, hey, can you please help me carry these boxes in? Right? So we're not actually, we're overprotecting, we're over-directing, we're taking over at times, and we're hand-holding way too much. And so the problem is by the time they get to college, what I call the longest umbilical cord, which is a cell phone, has not been severed. Truly. I see students sometimes leave and call their parents every day, right after. Mom, I need to know how to get to here. I need to go and do this. And these parents are, we're looking like, what? First of all, I said to one of my colleagues, I said, some of them just need to one of my clients said, I said, I'll use my client's word, get a life. Some of these parents just need to not respond, you don't need to pick up every time your kid calls. I need to know how to get here from campus for this interview. The cell phone has become the longest umbilical cord, and we are not severing it, and it's really unfortunate because then we're not raising adults, we're raising children. So we need to build life skills now. And my quick tips for how do we do it when we think of building life skills, I think of Russian developmental psychologist Vygotsky talks about scaffolding. He talks about when you scaffold, you come alongside, you see where they're at their level, and then when things are too hard, you provide kind of cues or signals or prompts. You say, well, what might, because sometimes they might need help with homework. I mean, let's help them, but let's not take over and do it for them. I often think with a new task in our house, and now that we have a just turned 5-year-old, I say, okay, first I'm going to do it for you. Then I'm going to do it with you. And then I'm going to watch you do it, so I'll still be there. And then I'm out of the picture. Do it independently. 4 steps. Do it for them, explaining. Do it with them. This is how we get this is the right way to put the, utensils in the drawer. There's 2 different drawers depending upon what utensils you're unloading, right? Do it with them. And then watch them do it. And then it's a road to independence. And then just step back and let them do it themselves. And even if it's not the exact way that you like, restrain yourself from going to fix it. Because often then you're teaching them, oh, wasn't good enough, guess I'm incompetent, right? So it's that idea of scaffolding and providing the support that we need when we need it, and then taking it away so that they can be independent. That is so empowering to kids. And you see kids light up when they actually can do it by themselves, especially if it was initially hard. So you've helped them, you've come alongside, and then they're doing the thing. Now, if we're going to build life skills, then we need to let them fail. Failure is okay. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of research that says failure actually builds grit and it builds resilience. We truly see that character strengths like self-control, like grit, are born out of failure. I think of James 1, 2, and 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Right? So in our faith, we can think about, hey, sometimes it's the hard times that I find myself on my knees a little bit more, for good or bad. I mean, I think we should be on our knees all the time, but if we're honest with ourselves, that's what happens, right? Well, same with kids. If we don't get out of the way and let them actually fail, right, they're not going to develop what Angela Duckworth calls grit. And grit is pursuing your passion. And that is such a wonderful character trait to develop in skills, in kids. So we need to provide character building opportunities for children. And let's not confuse stress and challenge. Because I don't want to stress my kids out. Okay, I get that. I'm not going to purposely stress my child out, but challenge them. Kids need to be challenged. And actually, research is showing some adversity is good for kids because it gives them the opportunity to experience failure and to manage it and to know that they're okay, right? So perseverance in pursuit of passion. There's actually Paul Tough. I don't know if any of you heard him speak when he was here. It was several years ago, and talks about an adversity gap. And he actually says, it's the idea of, hey, you know what, kids in the streets of Harlem, or maybe some of our own kids here on the Lower East Side of Santa Barbara, they actually have too much adversity, and we know that that is not helpful for them in the long term. There's more depression and anxiety and more PTSD when there's too much adversity. But kids in Montecito have too little adversity, actually, and truly it leads to entitlement. And it's a tough question of, well, how do we create challenge? We don't want to create stress, but how do we create challenge for our kids? Because truly this adversity gap of, we don't want too much. I mean, there's too much that some kids undoubtedly have, not helpful. But when they have none, it actually doesn't build character traits that we want. And by the way, in order to let them fail, you guys have to model failure. So for those perfectionists out there, it's okay. You gotta sometimes model that you failed, talk about it, let them know you've survived, and it's okay. And then lastly, I think, what time do we end, Lori? Probably in like 2 minutes.
11 is our ending time, but I'm sure people have questions.
Okay, so the beauty is this is our my last slide about when we think of counteracting entitlement. My other book that I recommend to all parents these days, and actually not just parents, all people, is Mindset. Has anybody read Mindset or know Carol Dweck's research? Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. She's also actually at Stanford, and her work on mindset and fixed versus growth mindset, and her name is written small up here, is fabulous. So we need to cultivate a growth mindset. And let me just briefly define what mindset is. We'll look real quickly at fixed and growth here, but I would just recommend the book once again, you don't have to be a parent because a lot of it's just about your own self and the thoughts that you bring to a situation and how you approach a challenge. So it's this idea of a fixed mindset, and you guys can follow along up here, is that people believe that their basic qualities and their basic even intelligence or talent are static. They're fixed traits. They feel a need, because they're fixed traits, they feel a need often to prove themselves and just kind of be praised for, I'm good, I'm just smart, I'm athletic. And that's kind of where they draw the line. And if they meet challenge, they do not approach challenge, because challenge, if I mess up, my mom's not gonna think I'm as smart. Or if I mess up, what if if I really try to do that move on the soccer field, and I fail? I'm kind of found out. I'm a little bit of a phony. So we have a fixed mindset, which is, hey, my ability and my intelligence is static. I can't change it. There's nothing I can do about it. And and usually these people think, but I'm smart and I'm capable, so thank goodness for that. What happens with the fixed mindset, they literally avoid challenges. When there's an obstacle, well, they just give up easily, don't want to persevere. They see effort as, well, what does effort make a difference? It doesn't really matter if I work hard or not. They ignore any sort of criticism that they have, even if it's constructive criticism, and they feel threatened by the success of others. Dweck's research shows that people with a fixed mindset think the world owes them something, and that if they've messed up, it's always somebody else's fault, and the world needs to change. It's not them. They feel entitled to something better. They feel entitled to a better job, a better marriage, a better you fill in the blank. The world should recognize their special qualities and treat them accordingly. Now, in a growth mindset, people believe their most basic abilities can be developed through hard work and through dedication. At times through failure and kind of picking ourselves back up and saying, I'm gonna try again. She uses Michael Jordan as a great example of a growth mindset, and even Tiger Woods. I've worked really hard, actually, to get where I'm at, and I've failed a lot of times along the way, but here I am at it again, right? So it's this idea of, yeah, I've got an innate ability, I've got an innate kind of intelligence level, but that's my starting point, and from there, I can move on. Right, so they believe their basic qualities are things that can be cultivated through effort. They believe they can change and grow through effort. Overall intelligence is something to be seen as developed. Now, scientists have found that people have tremendous capacity for lifelong learning and brain development. So really, when we look at the hard science and the empirical studies, we actually know that growth mindset is true. We do have the capability to improve upon our, whatever that might be, you fill in the blank, whether it's your athletic ability, musical ability, if we work hard, if we see challenge as an opportunity. Challenge becomes an opportunity, and failure actually becomes also another opportunity to do better. I'm going to pick myself back up and I'm going to try harder. The growth mindset overcomes a sense of entitlement in favor of effort. My success at that point is more of a reflection of my effort and openness as opposed to just, oh, well, it just kind of fell into my lap. So truly, the fixed mindset is more of an entitled mindset of, well, I should deserve it. The world owes me something. And if you ever get feedback, well, they're a bad professor. They're a bad therapist. Yeah, that person, they really didn't teach very well, right? That's how people in the fixed mindset, 'cause it's never about, you know what, I didn't study as hard. Or I didn't really I wasn't as open to hearing what they wanted to say. People with a growth mindset, they're going to see kind of feedback when it's constructive feedback as, oh, I can improve myself. I can work harder. I can do better. One of the things as parents that we can do to facilitate a growth mindset, be so mindful of the way in which you praise your kids. You are smart. You are just a great athlete. That is actually not helpful at all. If anything, kids then think, uh-oh, I better not. When we tell kids at 4 years old, Dweck did a fascinating research, 4-year-olds were given a puzzle, and this will just illustrate my point. And they were then, puzzle was pretty easy for both groups. And one group of 4-year-olds was told, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You are just so smart, when they finished the puzzle as quickly as they did. Another group was told, wow, you must have really worked hard to get that puzzle done so quickly. Okay, so then what happens next is both 4-year-olds are then given an opportunity. Same puzzle, similar puzzle, similar kind of in ease, or a much more challenging one. What are your guesses? The ones who were told, wow, you're so smart, what did they choose?
The easier one.
The easier one, kind of same ability, easier. The ones who were told, wow, you worked hard and you really thought through that and strategized. Nice. Which ones did they choose? The tougher one, because they weren't fearful. But the ones who are told, you're so smart, you're so great, all of a sudden if they fail, guess what? Oh, I guess I must not be as good of a girl or as smart of a boy anymore. We need to be so mindful of the way in which we praise. And I get that we want to lift our kids up and build them up. Let's praise the process, praise the effort, praise the hard work. Yeah, question,
That
Vanessa.
just quickly falls in line. I'm involved at the Oaks preschool as well, and they school us all the time to not say, wow, that's beautiful, or that's pretty, or even show them how to put art together. Like, they never come home with pre-made kittens, or they're to just explore and use their creation. And you can say, it's so hard though not to say, wow, that's beautiful.
Right.
I catch myself all the time.
Yes.
But use more words like, wow, I see you made good usage of the whole page. You covered the whole sheet. Or
Totally.
You used a lot of yellow.
That's exactly right. No, that's you. And let's be honest, it's not always beautiful. I mean, is it? Because half the time, but we just might say, oh, nice, that you did a great job. That you're a total artist.
So you agree with that?
Oh, I 100% agree.
And not assume that it's a rainbow when it's a dolphin.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Say, oh, I love your rainbow.
Yes.
It looks like a rainbow. You have to say, tell me about your picture.
That's exactly right. That's 100%, and that truly, I mean, that, and Dweck in her book talks about that, right? It's that idea of truly like noticing to say, you used a lot of yellow, or tell me about this, as opposed to just our automatic default. And I get it, we've got kids throwing papers. I mean, literally, just yesterday I got home, so sweet. My Tuesdays are quite long, and I get greeted, I mean, with such enthusiasm, which just warms my heart. It's kind of bedtime. One of them's totally naked because, just running to the back door, Mommy's home, Mommy's home. And literally, so many things are thrown in my face in that moment, and it's really easy to and so I'm more just like, oh, I can't wait to hear. But it'd be super easy to say, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You're an amazing artist. Look at you. Wow, you are so smart. When somebody shows me out, I need to just say, oh, this is so fun. I can't wait to see what you did today. And then kind of in calmer moments be like, oh, tell me about, couldn't tell what it was, what watercolor Madeline brought home. So tell me about this. And then I said, I love the way you combined the purple and blue. That is so cool, right? As opposed to just an automatic, because, and that's more what we want to be doing. So think specific, think kind of the process, think effort and work is what you want to be noticing. Yeah, Christy.
I feel like this was a tip. Somebody gave this example here, I'm almost certain, that they say, I love this one. I love watching you play, or I love watching you draw, because there's so much freedom in saying I love watching you draw, because they can be drawing. It's not an inherently good or bad statement in what they're doing.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of one of my go-tos, and I'm like, I don't know I love watching you create.
Yes, it's a great one. No, truly, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. No, it's so true.
Really mean anything.
Yep. Erin.
I'm really recognizing one of my children in the fixed mindset. What's a good way to battle the it's not fair statement? Not when please clear your throat. Oh, that's not fair, nothing like that. But like the world is happening to their, her.
Well, and can you, so it could be, it's not fair that this happened at, or some, yeah.
A lot of it's not fair comes out of my daughter's mouth.
Yeah,
so that's a good way. I don't think that's always what she means.
Right.
She means more like, I'm super bummed about what
Yes.
happened.
Well, and that's what you could start with of, oh, what do you mean? I mean, literally start with, wait, what do you mean by that? I'm not like, what do you mean? And maybe give her an option. Is it that you're disappointed that she got to do that and you didn't? Or is it just feels like, so give her a couple options depending on what you think it is, and then kind of go talking. And then there can be the conversation, so once you figure out exactly what it is that she means and you've got it, you can repeat it back, then you can kind of work with her from, you know what? Sometimes there is only one person who gets a trophy, which I would be so refreshed if that was the case. I mean, truly, like sometimes there's only one winner. And and I often will say, and they worked really hard, actually. And they probably were, maybe went out to the Rose Garden many times and ran around, did all their laps so they were ready and prepared. So depending upon what she might mean, Erin, once you get to that, I think then you can kind of hone in and figure out how to really promote more of a growth mindset of, you know what, sometimes we do have to work really hard to get the things that we want, don't we? And maybe it's not fair that she, who knows, whatever her situation is, automatically just...
When you just want to say, I know life's not fair.
Well, and I think at times you can, depending upon what she means, at times you can, but I would expand on that more, because she probably is more saying, I'm just disappointed that I didn't get this, or... Yeah.
This book mindset,
Yeah.
how young do you think it would be appropriate to share that with your child?
I had a client. Yeah. Well, I had a client who, a family that I work with, and they made, how old was he? They made their 5th grader read it with them. They read it as a family, and they literally would come in and be like, Dr. G, we love that book. It has revolutionized even, let's call him Joey, even little Joey or Johnny's, like, and he could sum it up. So I would say, depending upon their level, about 4th, 5th grade would be but I would truly, recommend it for just all of us as adults. You'll really kind of think about the way you think about challenge and the way you think about failure and opportunity. So I saw another hand. Oh yeah.
And then one more, and then
Okay, and then we need to end. Yes, well, let's get to at least this fun. This was my wrap-up slide, and so I can wrap it up. But yes, Gail.
I'm hearing a distinction. I want to check on it. When a child's working really hard on something, you say, I see that you work really hard versus you're a hard worker.
Well, you know what, you could do either of that is okay, actually, for when you're noticing that they're working really hard. Because you can still, wow, I would probably more go with, you're working so hard, and I see that. Good for you. That would be more of the way. I think you're a hard worker. It's still, you want to more, that's right. Because you don't want to use always the nouns. It's more, you are working hard. You are making a good choice, as opposed to, you're a good girl, you're a bad boy, right? It's more, you are making a really good choice here, as opposed to, you are good, right? So that's where I would always favor the kind of the action. Yeah, and there was one more, Lori, that you said. Yeah.
I was just wondering, because you've recommended 2 amazing books that I'm going to go get. Do you have any other ones?
Oh, let's see. I've got lots.
Or your go-to, books to recommend?
Well, I love, and I probably recommended it last time, I love Robert Emmons' Thanks, because that really does talk about gratitude and all of the benefits for gratitude. His last name is EMMONS. He's actually UC Davis, but he's been to Santa Barbara a good amount, and it's called Thanks with an exclamation point. And the one that I always just often will make all parents read that I come in contact with is John Gottman's How to Raise. So what's it called? How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child. Is that what it's called? John Gottman, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while. And then like social intelligence, like Daniel Goleman's work, I also really appreciate. So yeah, I can just do a quick wrap up. So to bring it all together, and then because I know we ran out of time, going back to this notion that we live in a world with a lot of stuff, with at times a lot of help, and sometimes we do have too much of no rules and no chores. And sometimes we're living in a world that tells us we're great, just because we're great. And I think as parents and as grandparents and aunts and uncles, it's our responsibility and it's our privilege to lead and guide our little ones along this journey. And truly, neurobiologists have shown that our brain has the consistency of butter, and as parents, we are the active sculptors of our kids' brains, which to me is absolutely one of the best and most rewarding and also most humbling jobs that we will ever have, right? What a responsibility and what a privilege. So I would just say, let's be mindful to be effective in setting discipline and being okay with giving structure and setting limits and saying no, cultivating gratitude, building life skills and working on that now, letting them fail. So let's get out of the way a little bit more often and let them fail. And then let's instill a growth mindset. So I love saying freedom within form, life within law, and love within limits. If we could all kind of think along those lines. Well, there you go, and we're done, and we're out of time. So thank you.
So let me just say in gratitude that Andrea, I know her personally, and she is so busy right now. It's like she has no room to breathe. And the fact that she gave us this time this morning, I just want to thank you so much. You have blessed us so
You're welcome. Thanks.